So my last couple days of high school were a little rough. My mother, sister, and I had immigrated from Romania just 2 years before. So on prom day, as I was walking on the hallways of Washington Lee High, the hallways were empty. The seniors were somewhere else getting ready for prom and grad night. I had no plans for prom and didn't actually know what grad night was. You see, for the 2 years since I'd been here, I'd been too busy learning the ways of this new world around me, studying hard to make up for an incomplete transcript with which I had arrived, packing on extracurriculars, playing basketball, and working on Fridays and the weekends. At home, I lived with my single mom, who courageously packed up everything and moved my sister and me and herself across half the world in search for a better life in her late 40s. She was anxious and worried, and she felt strongly tethered to our homeland by very, very strong cultural traditions. She was afraid and anxious, worried about our future, and worried about how we would make it and succeed. So she expected perfection. Not getting it right was not an option. I didn't have closeness with anyone other than my sister, nor privacy. I missed my friends and my home. I was sad, depressed, overwhelmed, and very, very lonely. So on that day, I sat down in the hallway, clutching my books, and cried. Have you ever felt the pangs of loneliness, despair, and grief like I did that day? If you're anything like the leaders I work with, you too have had your share of stress, overwhelm, and feeling utterly and completely depleted. What do you believe leaders need to thrive in our volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world? Recent publications call on resilience as a place to start. Some articles call resilience the most important business skill and the key to thriving in turbulent times. Resilience is defined as your capacity to withstand adversity and grow from challenge, which all sounds great, but there is a problem. That definition of resilience points a finger at the person to take the burden for bouncing off from adversity, rather than really looking at the system that contributes to the challenge in the first place. In my work with executive and senior leaders who are looking to achieve breakthrough results for themselves and their teams while thriving, I created a framework called SURGE. SURGE stands for Systemic Understanding of Recovery and Growth Through Energy. Let's look at the SU, Systemic Understanding. We must start with a look of the past. What brought us here? Look into the future and see the vision of where we want to go. And more importantly, look at the present and say, what is happening here now for the individual and the organization? So as an example, systems understanding includes acknowledging that a company's success is tied to the health and well-being of its people, whose health and well-being is in turn tied to the community and the environments in which they live. Furthermore, systemic understanding acknowledges that people's energy can either be depleted or restored by a company's culture, and the executive leader's presence, stance, and actions around issues that really make a difference in our society, like income inequality or racism. R is for recovery. Recovery is the deliberate process of repairing leaks and restoring energy that we've drained after prolonged periods of burnout, stress, trauma, and crises in our own lives, in our work, and in our communities. We start with resilience. We start with recovery because it is critical to our ability to build resilience. G is for growth. It is what all organizations are looking for and hoping for, and truly actually what our hearts are longing for as well. Growth is our common goal. And finally, E, my favorite. E is for energy, and specifically here, our human energy. It is our most precious resource, more so than time and money. It is what we need better at cultivating and conserving. And at an organizational level, it is the vibrancy of our teams, the ethos of our brands, and that catalyst behind our dreams and our services and our solutions that really truly change the world. So where do we start? Well, that day after my tears in the hallway incident, as I was walking in the hallways, one of my teachers tapped me on my shoulder and invited me to follow her into the teacher's lounge, where she said she had something to show me. So I walked into the lounge and saw that every teacher I had ever taken classes from was in that room. They had balloons, streamers, a cake, and even a present. They said they knew I hadn't gone to prom, and they knew how sad I was. And they wanted to make sure I didn't leave high school without a celebration, not knowing how much I had meant to them and what an impact I had made. In that moment of validation and recognition, I felt seen. And for the first time in 2 years, I felt a heartwarming sense of belonging. That day started for me the process of recovery from the challenges brought on by my immigration to this beautiful country. That moment of recognition and validation from my teachers was the foundation for what I know now about recovery. That moment bolstered my resilience and made me aware of the energy I had depleted that I needed to restore. So now, in case you're one of the people in the room a little skeptical, is it really possible to recover your energy fully, even after bigger setbacks? Remember, we do have models for how people do recovery really well. Athletes do it all the time. And those who do it best are the champions whose names we hear for decades, like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Simone Biles and Serena Williams. Great athletes prioritize recovery in service of greatness and longevity, long-term sustained impact and results. Recovery is a deliberate practice that needs to be sustained. It's not just the day off or a day of rest or the absence from work. Recovery is intentional. It is holistic. It is done in stages. It is done individually and in a group. Recovery renews energy. Energy fuels resilience. Resilience needs recovery. Your recovery is radical, and now is the time to start.